Hey guys, it's Wolf and Storm coming at you live, and I know it's a bit later than I was expecting. Last week when I was in Noel's live stream, I know I said that I was going to post a couple Doctor Who videos, but real life got in the way, and I did not have the time. So, and I still don't. Kind of crazy, as you can see by the background here. This is not where I normally live. I'm out of town for the week, so um, instead of doing three separate videos, which I don't have time for, I'm going to smush it all together. Three different topics into one video. So we're going to try to keep this as succinct as possible. Three topics that we're going to be doing. We're going to be discussing Big Finish's release Out of Time, Part 1, which stars David Tennant as the 10th Doctor in a meetup with Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor. It is totally awesome. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So we're going to be reviewing that. Second thing is we're going to be looking at Titan Comics trailer that is dropped on YouTube for their Time Lord Victorious comic book series. That is actually the first edition of it is due out tomorrow, September 2nd. I think it's two or three comics. Two comics? Yeah, two comics. The first comic comes out tomorrow. And I think the second one comes out either at the end of the month or October or something like that. Anyway, so we're going to be looking at that trailer. And then third, bonus section is going to be a little Screen Rant goodness. It's been quite negative on Screen Rant past week, 2 weeks or so. And this particular article has to do with the current era's musical choices and how they negatively contribute to the downfall of this particular era of the show. So we will look at that as well. All right, so without further ado, we are going to power right into it so we can keep this as succinct as possible. First things first, Out of Time. This is something that I know for Big Finish has been actually a couple years in the making, at least based off of the behind-the-scenes interviews. They have been trying for some time to get David and Tom together to do a live recording of this story, but because David Tennant is such an in-demand actor, he just didn't have the time. So fortuitously, when lockdown happened last spring, everybody was kind of out of work. So it was very fortuitous for Nick Briggs and all the rest of them over at Big Finish, and they thought, well, this is perfect timing. We can do this. We can finally get this recorded because they can do it in the comfort of their own homes. They're not too busy. They're sitting around, so this is a perfect chance. So they sent David a text and said, hey, you want to do this? And he's like, because of course, being the Doctor Who fanboy that he is, and the fact that he absolutely adores Tom, this is like without even a question, of course. So they took that time that they had, they put it together, and they came out with a great product. So we're going to review that. Now, before I start, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you can, help me keep on keeping on. My social media links are in the description for Twitter and my Patreon page. If you want to help the channel keep going, hit me up there. Give me a follow or subscribe. And of course, don't forget to hit me up on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. The more viewers, the better. The more likes, the better. Gets my content out there on the interwebs. And now into the review. So, this story, a little bit of context going into this. This story takes place for the 4th Doctor. This is right after he takes Sarah Jane home for the last time. And this is just after he returns from Gallifrey, when he was made de facto president in The Deadly Assassin. So this is the first time he's been by himself in a long while, because he's had companions for a while now, and he'd become very close to Sarah Jane. So he's kind of a bit of an in-between place. He's a little sad, a little depressed, and kind of needing to recenter himself a little bit. So he's decided to go to the Cathedral of Contemplation to kind of get his head back on straight before he ventures back out into the world again. So needless to say that when he leaves this particular story, we're going to go right to Face of Evil, where he meets Leela for the first time. And for 10, his context, of course, is that this is all in his lead up to End of Time. I'm fairly certain this is after Planet of the Dead and after Waters of Mars. It's somewhere between Waters of Mars and End of Time, where he is running literally for his life. He doesn't want to face his own death, and he's angry and bitter, and he's just kind of running around causing trouble wherever he goes, making mischief, and because he's not able to face up to it. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to go. So this opportunity for them to meet, I think, kind of helps them both a little bit. For 4, it gives him a very big glimpse into his own mortality, seeing some part of what he will become in later years. And I think it kind of teaches him a lesson of sorts about making sure that you don't travel alone for too long and you don't let the loneliness get to you, because if you do, then it could turn you into somebody you don't want to be. And for the 10th Doctor, the 4th Doctor tries to impart these words of wisdom that he shouldn't travel alone. He has sworn off companions because he has just lost Rose for the second time. He had to take Donna's memories at the end of Journey's End, so he is hurt, he's lost, he's broken, and it has become too painful for him to take on companions knowing that he's going to lose them in the long run. So he's at a point where now he's kind of sworn it off altogether, and he hasn't traveled with anybody for a while, and he's swearing up and down that he's never going to travel with companions ever again, especially now that he's supposedly going to die soon. But the 4th Doctor is trying to impart this wisdom to him that, when you know your time is getting close to an end, it's important for you to be surrounded by those that love you and that care about you, so that you know you're not alone. Having friends and family is the most important thing. I don't know how much of that manages to sink in by the time End of Time comes around, but I think a little bit of it does, because, at the end of End of Time Part 2, he does the whole companion goodbye tour, so I think it did kind of sink in a little bit with him. So this audio was about an hour and 15 minutes long, not very long, just your normal standard. By the way, this is only part 1 of 3. When they dropped this last Wednesday, they actually included that there are going to be 2 more parts: Out of Time Part 2 and Out of Time Part 3. Part 2 is going to be the 10th Doctor meets up with the 5th Doctor, so it'll be Peter Davison and David Tennant. That should be interesting. Father-in-law, son-in-law. And the 3rd part of Out of Time will be the 10th Doctor and Doctor number 6. So that should be very interesting. The only little bit of plot points we have for part 2 is the 10th Doctor and the 5th Doctor, I think they're in Paris, and it has something to do with the Cybermen. And then the 6th Doctor and the 10th Doctor meet up, and they are fighting the Weeping Angels. So that's a little bit of plot we have for those. We're not going to know anything else for a while because part 2 will not be coming out till next year. And then part 3 will not be coming out till 2022. So we have quite a bit of time to wait. Before I go any further, this is not a spoiler-free blog. So if you have not listened to Out of Time Part 1, I suggest that you pause now, come back to it later after you have, because there's definitely going to be some spoilerage. So both of the doctors have gone to the Cathedral of Contemplation, which is a trans-temporal work of art of sorts. And it's made up of different corridors of time so that people can come from all different periods of time and they meet up in the, in the middle. They never do cross because it's not safe for people from different time periods to cross. When they come down the time corridors, they're each sent to their own separate room where, and allowed to do whatever they want to do, whether it's paint or read or help with the mechanics of the cathedral, just whatever they feel that they want to do. If they want to meditate, whatever makes them feel comfortable. So the fourth Doctor has been there this whole time basically painting a large mural in his room. And he has an assistant that's been working with him, cleaning his brushes and things, and he's just pretty much just been jabbering and talking to her, mostly about himself, which is normal for him. But he's, in her mind, he's a slight bit self-absorbed, but a generally very sweet, kind man. And but when 10 gets there, David Tennant has no problem falling right back in to the 10th Doctor whatsoever. It's like he never even left. Actually, neither of them have any problem with it. It's like they've been doing this forever, which they kind of have. So right now, you can tell by how David is approaching the Doctor that he is in a devil may care headspace where he don't give two shits about what's going on, and if he goes and breaks the rules, well, fuck it, I'm gonna die anyway, so who cares, right? The abbess that's in charge of the cathedral tells him he has to stay in his one room. They can't cross over because she already knows that there's another version of him there and they're not supposed to meet, so she's trying to keep them apart. But of course the 10th Doctor, being the 10th Doctor, rules right out the window. So he wants to go to this, there's a room in there where you get to see all parts of I forget what it's called, but it's like a diorama of different places and different times, and he wants to see all of these things. She doesn't want him to go in there because, being what he's capable of, she doesn't want him to do anything stupid. But he manages to find his way into the fourth Doctor's room, and he knows immediately who this person is because this person is from his past. So of course, he's going to recognize himself, but the fourth Doctor doesn't recognize him. I always found that kind of weird because since they're telepathic, you would assume that if two of them are in the same area for any length of time, that they'll immediately know, like they'll sense it, but they don't make that very apparent. Anyway, he doesn't realize who the 10th Doctor is at first. I think he has a suspicion, but 4 being 4, he's always mum. So they're talking a bit. The abbess finds him because he knows he's not supposed to be there, and she drags him back to where he's supposed to be. Well, be all and end all in this story, it has to do with the 4th and 10th Doctors trying to save the lives of all of the people at the cathedral while also outwitting a horde of Daleks. Apparently, the Daleks have been wanting to make use of the time corridors in the cathedral to be able to go to different points in time, because the cathedral rotates, and when the corridors rotate and lock, they lock on different doors, which are in different periods of time. So they want to use those doorways to be able to invade different periods of time so that they can literally destroy all of time and space, like every galaxy, every planet, everywhere, and every when. They think that getting a hold of the cathedral is the perfect way. So first, the human militia shows up because they're looking for the woman who is the Fourth Doctor's assistant. She's actually supposed to be a soldier. This, at least she's from the 26th century Earth. And if you ever listened or watched any of the classic Doctor Who episodes, you know that in 26th century Earth it was during the Daleks' invasion of Earth. It was like the Dalek wars. They were at war not just with humans but with other aliens as well. Anyhow, so one of the generals shows up to get his daughter because his daughter has run away from home. She doesn't have, apparently she does not feel she's brave enough to be a soldier, even though her father has been pushing her towards it, but she doesn't want to do it. She's too afraid. So she goes to the cathedral to hide, and she becomes the Doctor's assistant, I guess. So he goes there to get her, but she doesn't want to leave. And the Daleks quickly follow, and it goes to hell in a handbasket very quick. The best part about this, bar none, is the sparring between 10 and 4. The two of them are on point. It's amazing to me that this dialogue was recorded separately. David recorded his and then Tom did his, and they kind of smushed it together because it sounds so seamless, almost as if they're in the same room, just riffing off of each other. It's absolutely phenomenal. Now, you know that when the Doctors come into contact with each other, they don't necessarily get along. So it's no surprise that they would be kind of, but these two, they don't not get along like in a, oh, you're just an idiot way. It's more like, I think 10 is a bit of in awe of him because the way that he speaks, it's almost like, the way he speaks of the Fourth Doctor, it's almost like it's David fanboying over the Fourth Doctor. He's like, oh, look at him, all sideburns and long scarf. No one can enter a room quite like him. No one can wear a scarf quite like him, you know? And yes, it's the Doctor saying this, but in some sort of weird meta way, it also feels like it's David himself, because you know David has to be fanboying over this like crazy. Tom Baker was the first Doctor that he grew up with when he was a child, so this is like for him a big deal. But it's very interesting to see how they kind of spar and riff off of each other, because the Fourth Doctor kind of doesn't understand why the 10th Doctor is so scared of dying. Why? Because he knows he's going to regenerate. It's not like he's going to die. But again, the Fourth Doctor doesn't have the benefit of that future knowledge. And you can tell in their dialogue that it's difficult for the 10th Doctor because he wants to tell him about Gallifrey, but he can't. He wants to tell him about the Time War, but he can't. To help the Fourth Doctor to understand why he's in the mindset that he is in now, and why it hurts him so desperately when he loses people that he cares about because he's been alone for so long, but he can't because, future knowledge is not allowed. So he just kind of has to go with the flow and try to help him to understand in a more roundabout way without saying it without saying it. But I think even without him being able to tell him future events, the Fourth Doctor can see in his actions and in his words that he's a very lonely, broken man. I remember just distinctly at the end, the last conversation they had before they part ways, and he says to him, "Are you sure?" He even offers to take the 10th Doctor with him to travel with him, which is kind of weird. 2 doctors in the same TARDIS. And he's like, "No, I have to do this, And he says to him, it's really important, if you know that you don't have a lot of time left, you really should surround yourself with friends and family. It's important that you not be alone. That because they don't make you weak. I know it hurts when you lose them, but when they're with you, they give you strength. That's why it's important for you to have them. And I think the 10th Doctor kind of gets that. But again, the 10th Doctor has been around a lot longer and has experienced and lost so much more than the fourth has. So I guess it's difficult for them to see it from each other's perspective. I think the fourth Doctor does give the 10th some sense of comfort, knowing that, maybe he's right, but I just don't feel ready yet. Because honestly, if he didn't believe he was right, he wouldn't have gone on the farewell tour to see all of his companions before he died. And for the fourth Doctor, I think it just solidified for him even more that it is important. No matter how many times they leave, I can't let it deter me. I have to keep going on, and I have to allow them in. I can't push them away. I can't turn into this bitter person. I have to keep trying. I have to keep moving, which is why not long after this particular event, he meets Leela. So, and I know they're not the best matched duo, but they're interesting. So yeah, Out of Time was definitely worth the buy. It was also one of the best part of stories, aside from the Doctor, is the sub story of Jorah, who's the woman whose father is trying to get her to come back and be a soldier in the Dalek War. She doesn't want to be involved. She doesn't believe she's brave enough. She's too consumed by fear. But at the end of it, she's the one that helps the Doctor to get all of the parishioners to safety. So even though she doesn't believe she has that bravery in herself, she somehow finds it. Even if she has to fake it, she still finds it. And he says to her, look, I'm not always brave. I might seem like it, but that's bullshit. I totally fake it. Totally fake it. And if you have to fake it, then you do that. As long as you get the job done, But it was just sad that, even though her father was a bit of a jerk, at the end of the day, the fact that the Daleks killed him and then made a body duplicate of him to go and take over the cathedral, it was just sad to me that she never got to come to terms with her father. She never got to make peace with that. But where she is right now, in the planet that they got left on, it's obviously it's a different planet and a different time, because there was only one door that was left open, and it's definitely not a door to Earth in her time. It's a different planet, different time period, but it's peaceful, which is I think what she wanted in the long term. So the fourth Doctor even offered her a chance to come on the TARDIS, but she turned it down. She said she just wanted a nice quiet life where no crazy. The action was really good. I've always loved how Big Finish audio dramas kind of surround you, not with just the words, but with the sound, so that you can visualize in your mind what is going on. You can picture it. You can picture the action and immerse yourself into the story. That's why I like the audio dramas versus just when a person just blanket reads a book. And an audiobook is just somebody reading the book. There's no sound effects or anything to complement it, unless you're talking about like a Star Wars book. But that's the exception. So it's very easy to get drawn into the Big Finish stories because they create an entire world. And it's almost like you're watching an episode on TV without there being a TV. So if you guys have the chance, £8.99, bigfinish.com. I know there are probably other resources that you can get it at. But if you have the opportunity, bigfinish.com, £8.99, it is worth it. I mean, come on, it's David Tennant. And it's Tom Tom Baker. How is it not worth it? Okay. So that part is over. Now we're going to be moving on to part 2 of the video. Our review of the Titan Comics Time Lord Victorious trailer. This trailer dropped last week, and it has to do with the 2-part Time Lord Victorious comic book series that Titan Comics is putting out as part of the big Time Lord Victorious hoo-ha. That comic book is one of the first things that's coming out. I know that there's supposed to be some shorts, like real short stories from the point of view of each of the Daleks, but most of those are supposed to come with the figurines. But the actual first, like, tangible something I can read is going to be Titan Comics Volume 1, Time Lord Victorious. Let me see here. I'm going to pull up the video so we can watch it together. It's called First of Two Oversized Issues, kicking off the multi-platform Doctor Who epic Time Lord Victorious. Available at comic shops and digital platforms on September 2nd, 2020. So if you want to get this, there are different options. You can go to Forbidden Planet in the UK, Entertainment Earth, which is a US-based entertainment store. I know sells copies of it. Comixology, if you want to do digital. And if you're wanting the entire breakdown of the whole Time Lord Victorious timeline, the Doctor Who official website has their own link, which is TimeLordVictorious.com. That is a part of the official Doctor Who website, and they have that nice full color thing that goes like this, and it tells you the dates it's color coded for each thing, whether it's an audio or a regular book or a comic book or a live event. It breaks it all down so it won't get confused. The only thing that I have an issue with Time Lord Victorious is I think that the marketing could have been handled better. I think it's a really great idea, but the problem is that they come out with all these things that they want you to get that have to do with the overall storyline, but they don't tell you what the overall storyline is. So you don't know how everything ties together, because each story is in a different time period, in a different place, but you don't really understand how it all ties together. I know that the Doctor Who official website also put out 3 different videos, and they're like little teasers where it takes place in UNIT, and they're monitoring this big crack in time. These are teasers for the live event that's supposed to take place next year. It's kind of an escape room of sorts. So there's 3 different little videos, and it has to do with the UNIT scientists investigating the time crack, and the time crack is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And things are starting to fall through, like one of 10's Converse high tops, one of 11's boots. You obviously know that these are possessions that belong to the Doctor, but they're trying to figure out. They try to send someone in there to investigate. It doesn't go well. So I guess that might be considered like an overarching thing, but that's only just for that escape room. It doesn't really explain the whole overarching story. That part of the marketing, I think they could have done better. All it seems right now is just a bunch of disparate things that have come out that say Time Lord Victorious on it. Buy it. But they don't really give you a reason. Okay, it's a part of the Time Lord Victorious set, but you're not telling me what the whole overall story is. Now, I don't know what the whole overall story is, and I don't so I can't follow it, and I don't know if it's interesting or not. Why should I buy it? Just because David Tennant is on the cover, or Christopher Eccleston is on the cover, or Billy Piper is on the cover. I mean, okay, that might be enough for me, but still, for a lot of fans, they want a more cohesive story, and I kind of do too. I mean, I don't like being taken for a ride just because of my love of the Ninth and Tenth Doctors and of Rose. So I don't want to have to shell out money and then get these things, and they're okay by themselves, but they don't fit together as a cohesive story. You know what I mean? So, okay, I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. Now let's look at the trailer, see what we got. Okay, we'll play. Alright, so that is the trailer. It's by Titan Comics, written by Jody Houser. You can definitely tell that it's written by Jody Houser, because Jody Houser has primarily done a lot of the Titan Comics for the 13th Doctor. It definitely has her color palette for the 13th Doctor, and her aesthetic and 10th Doctor design for the 13th Doctor series. The art's okay. I know I've seen better. But this particular storyline, from what I can tell, takes place, I think it's in an alternate universe. I don't know, alternate timeline, or parallel dimension or something, where the time war didn't happen. Because somehow the 10th Doctor gets transported there, finds himself there, and is confronted with this group of Daleks. And of course, you would assume the first thing he'd want to do is destroy them, because they're Daleks. But they're actually asking him for help. They're desperately begging him for help, because they're up against some sort of enemy that scares even them. And when he's talking to them about the Time War, they're looking at him like, huh? They don't know what he's talking about. And he's like, I'm sorry, you don't remember the Time War. The Time War. Like, they have no idea. So first he's got to figure out how he manages to find himself in a place where the Time War never happened. Or is it just that nobody remembers it? And then he has to figure out what exactly they want from him, because he's very obviously leery of helping Daleks. I mean, why should he help Daleks? And the fact that they're coming to him, their mortal enemy, because they're that terrified of whatever it is that this entity is. And you just think about that for a second. We're talking about Daleks here. Daleks who aren't scared of anything. They don't even know the word fear. They don't even understand the emotion. So for them to believe that they need his help to defeat whatever this thing is, it has to be big. So that's going to be a 2-issue set. Not tiny comics either. These are thick, big comics. So that's coming out. The first issue is coming out September 2nd. Second one, I think, might be October, November. So yeah, I mean, the artwork is okay. I don't really care about the artwork more. I care more about the story. I kind of have some reservations about this particular story because I've seen some of the cover artwork, and I know that this particular storyline involves the Emperor of the Daleks, and the design of the Emperor is totally different than the design that we know of now. This might have something to do with the fact that it's a parallel Earth, alternate dimension, whatever you want to call it. But last I saw, the Emperor of the Daleks was fucking huge. Like, took up the entire space of one room, and Rose Tyler destroyed him in parting of the ways. So, the Emperor of the Daleks in this one is the same size as a normal Dalek, just with a round, dome-like head. It's really the only difference. I don't know. I'm kind of like, huh? Confused. Is this supposed to take place, you know, in a dimension where parting of the ways never happened? Or, yeah, a little confused. Anyway, so, I already have this comic book on order, an actual tangible, not a digital copy. I know it comes out tomorrow, but I won't be getting it tomorrow because it's coming from Forbidden Planet, which is in the UK, so it's going to take a little time for it to get here. But once it does, we will review that forthwith, as I will review everything else that I get from Time Lord Victorious when it gets here. Okay. So, yeah, there's really not much to say about the trailer because it's fairly short, sweet and to the point. So, I guess we will have more information when it gets here. We'll just have to see. I still feel like it's a little bit of a cash grab. I know BBC has had a hard time making money. You know, a lot of people in the UK are giving up their licenses, not wanting to watch television anymore over there. Doctor Who merchandise is not selling well. Doctor Who ratings are in the shitter. And Doctor Who magazine, their subscriber base is getting smaller and smaller. So they have to do something to keep the bucks coming in. So I guess it makes sense to put 8th, 9th, and 10th Doctor's faces on this particular serial of stories because there's like pretty much the 3 highest selling Doctors so far. They know at the very least the 10th Doctor will always bring in the big bucks. Okay. I hope it doesn't turn into a disaster because they're already going through a rough enough time as it is. So we shall see how that goes. All right. Bonus. Screen Rant. Screen Rant. All right. Screen Rant 4 days ago. The new article, Doctor Who's new music reveals the problem with Whittaker's era. A recent interview with Doctor Who composer Segun Akinola shines a fascinating light on one of the many problems facing the current series. This is another one written by Thomas Bacon. Segun Akinola, for those not in the know, he is the new composer of the Chibnall era of Doctor Who. He came in 2018 because Murray Gold, who'd been the composer since day one, 2005, he left when Stephen Moffat left in 2017. Segun Akinola's score for Doctor Who has not been the best received. That's all I can say. It's more like music, elevator music, kind of. It's very earthy, very atmospheric. There's no emotion behind it, which is sad because some of the best parts of New Who had to do with the score. Each Doctor got their own individual score, their own musical piece. Each companion got their own motif that played over some very emotional moments. So you knew what he was thinking. You knew that the companion, you knew that there was an emotional moment coming. And it really contributed a great deal to the overall atmosphere of the show. Some of the best of his compositions was the music he did for Doomsday, Stolen Earth, and Journey's End. Hellbent wasn't the best episode, but Clara's, and I didn't particularly care for Clara as a companion, but her musical score was top-notch. And it really contributed to those emotional beats. You felt what the Doctor was feeling. You felt what the companions felt. You felt their joy, their sadness, their heartbreak, their horrors. You know, you don't feel that with New Guy. And I think it's really sad because it's just one more problem that the show needs to deal with. They shouldn't have to deal with. Score is not a hard thing to do. If you can't endear your audience to the characters and make them feel for the characters and empathize with the characters, then the story just becomes a boring slogfest. That you just don't want to sit through. So, moving on. Doctor Who's new music neatly symbolizes the problems of the Chris Chibnall era. The classic Doctor Who series is largely divided by main actors. Think of the Hartnell era, the time of Tom Baker, or the McCoy era. But the relaunched Doctor Who series is characterized more by the different distinctive show runners, the Russell T Davies era, the Stephen Moffat run, and now the age of Chris Chibnall. Chibnall's run has proved divisive. Current showrunner believes Doctor Who should be educational, and as such he's enjoyed some carefully structured historical episodes and presented quite strong social commentary on current issues. Do you think? His idea that the show needs to be based on teaching and centered around the historicals, or his ridiculous teenage dream fan fiction brought to life, is destroying the show bit by bit. I will admit, back in the 60s, that they did start the show based mainly on historicals. But Sidney Newman and Verity Lambert very quickly understood that the historicals were not cutting it. People didn't like them. They were bored. They wanted to focus on the sci-fi aspect, the monsters and the aliens. That is what kept the viewers tuning in. One of the highest rated episodes of the first Doctor's run was the first time that he faced off against the Daleks. They would rather see that than one of the first episodes of Hartnell's run where he was enjoying a day with cavemen. I mean, come on. It only took them a matter of weeks before they began to realize that the historicals were not going to fly. And that got chucked into the dustbin. And they focused mainly on aliens, monsters. That's the bread and butter of the show. I don't know why Chris Chibnall seems to think that it needs to be historicals and teaching things. He generally seems to believe that the show should be focused on only children. And he writes the scripts and he tells his actors to act as if they're acting in a children's show. Because it's family entertainment. But if you're saying it's family entertainment, that means it's not just for kids. It's also for adults. You know, family together. Kids might sit through it and not care. But honestly, from what I've heard, even kids think that this is a slogfest. And the adults, I mean, I don't even know what to tell you about what the adults think. So, Chibnall's run is proved, yeah, okay. He's determined to leave his mark on the franchise, and in Doctor Who Season 12, he retconned the show's entire history. He revealed the Doctor is actually the Timeless Child, an ancient being who potentially predates the entire universe and who became the base genetic code for the entire Time Lord race. This has understandably divided the fan base, with some wishing it could all be retconned away, and others interested to see where it goes next. The problems run a lot deeper than the Timeless Child retcon, however, as was revealed in a recent interview with composer Segun Akinola. I'm not going to go into the Timeless Child. I've already discussed this, so I'm blue in the face. So there's nothing about the issues with the Timeless Child that you don't know. So, Flickering Myth recently asked Akinola about his approach to composing music for Doctor Who's classic monsters, and his responses were fascinating. Surprisingly, Akinola chose not to look back at any previous episodes for inspiration. In musical terms, it's just been a blank slate, he explained. Yes, the Cybermen are coming back, but it's a blank slate and they're going to have a new theme. Even Captain Jack, he has a new theme. The problem is that this approach removes any sense of musical continuity between the age of previous composer Murray Gold and his successor. Akinola is treating Doctor Who as though it is a brand new series, as though he has no lessons to learn from the recent past. The same appears to be true of Chris Chibnall himself. See, this is a problem. People who watch this show, the majority, are people that have watched for a long time fans. So they're very familiar with the late motifs and the musical scores that go along with the villains and the companions. So if you suddenly scrap all that and you compose something that's completely new, if he composed new motifs that had the same kind of gravitas and emotional beats that Murray Gold did, we probably wouldn't have minded. But the fact that his score is nothing but just atmospheric drivel that anybody could put together using a basic musical application. There's no, it's boring. There's no emotion behind it. I remember watching Rise of the Cybermen in Age of Steel, the first time that we saw the Cybermen in New Who. And before you even saw them come on screen, you hear that dun 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 as they, as they walk in, and it's a great lead-in, and it really makes you feel, oh my God, these things are a threat. These things are dangerous and deadly. When you have a new score that's nothing but like some sort of atmospheric electronic whatever, you don't feel that threat from the villain. If we're familiar with Captain Jack's theme and then you replace it with something else, but it's not necessarily a theme song, it's just some atmospheric bullshit, it doesn't grab you. It doesn't make you feel, oh, Captain Jack. It doesn't get you excited. There's no emotion there. It doesn't draw you in. And if it doesn't draw you in, then you just don't care. For Akinola to say, okay, complete blank slate, I don't care what happened before, that's horrible. How do you act like everything that came before doesn't matter? I know that a lot of the score that Murray Gold did actually kind of was adapted in some ways, not necessarily for the Doctor or for the companions, but for the villains and the monsters. He kind of adapted some of the older score from the classic show into the new show. So they had that continuity, and they would be familiar with it. They would recognize, oh, that's Cybermen, or oh, those are Daleks, And a lot of the scores that he's composed for the individual Doctors and for the companion pieces have become epic pieces of music that will never be forgotten. That as soon as you hear them, you go, that's Rose's theme, or that's Donna's theme. You just know as soon as you hear it. Here, every single theme sounds the same, so there's really no difference between them. There's nothing inspiring about it. There's nothing interesting about it. There's nothing emotional about it. Nothing that draws you in. Nothing that makes you want to care. It's all just boring. I don't understand why he would just not try to look at older episodes for to be inspired. Murray Gold is like a national fucking treasure in the UK because of the work that he put into this show. His motifs and his score is some of the best parts of those episodes that make you remember them to this day. I mean, a big reason why people remember the last scene on Bad Wolf Bay in Doomsday, aside from, of course, the amazing performance of Billy and David, is Murray's accompanying soundtrack, his Doomsday score. You would never forget that. It's burned into your brain. And here, in this era, you don't remember one scene from another because nothing about it is memorable. And honestly, it's just sad. It's just sad. It's just really, really sad. In truth, Chibnall doesn't seem to have been willing to learn anything from the Davies and Moffat eras. The Timeless Child retcon fits with classic Who, but not modern, which makes sense given it was an idea Chibnall came up with when he was growing up watching the original series in the 1980s. Although the production values of Doctor Who have never been better in visual terms, the pace of the episodes is slowed. Countless scenes take place in static shots, with the dynamism of Davies' relaunch forgotten. And yet, for all that's the case, Chibnall is clearly ambitious to permanently transform the franchise. This whole deal with the Timeless Children was actually mostly his own idea, some weird fanfic he dreamt up when he was a teenager, that I guess when he became runner of the show, he was like, oh, I get to finally put my fanfic onto the screen. Dude. Never. Ever, ever, ever. Apparently when he saw the brain of Morbius, he really thought that'd be a great story to do a fanfic on, and made this whole huge freaking storyline just based around that. And put it into action in the Timeless Child, which is just I can't even. I understand that each showrunner is different and they have their own ways of doing things, but no showrunner could be so egotistical that they would just shove off those that came before like they didn't even exist. Even in the classic series, when it changed over, when the showrunner changed over between the third and fourth Doctors and the fourth, and then when Hinchcliffe left and John Nathan Turner came in, they were extremely respectful of the showrunners that came before, and the changes that they made were not, massive changes. They showed respect to the past, and whatever they added on was more for aesthetic and to expand the franchise further, not to completely overwrite it and chuck it out like it was never there. Even though Moffat comes from a very different way of doing things, he does more dramas, whereas Davies is more like soap operas and comedies. They still have great reverence for each other's work. And I think Moffat, in some ways, kind of continued where Davies left off without making it too much worse. Yes, I know Moffat has a serious problem with finishing story arcs. That is a serious issue, which caused his writing to deteriorate as the seasons went on. But he had enough reverence for what Davies did that he kept Murray Gold. He kept the scores. He kept those overall themes, and he didn't impinge on what came before. He didn't just chuck it out and decide to totally remake the show from scratch. He built on what Davies had started. Whereas Chibnall just kind of threw their crap into the trash and decided to totally remake the show on his own. There's a fundamental problem with this approach. It forgets an entire generation of fans fell in love with Doctor Who through the Davies and Moffat eras, and the show will only succeed so long as these viewers keep on tuning in. Yes, it's fine for a showrunner and a composer to want to make their mark and create something unique, but there also needs to be a sense of continuity. Audiences love Doctor Who, but that means people have their own ideas what Doctor Who should look and sound like. If you forget that, you'll simply irritate people and get them changing the channel. Exactly. If you're consistently helming your show to appeal only to audience now, like to generation now, and fuck generation before, your show is not going to be successful. Chibnall is focusing on a very small group of fans that have only just now come in. He wanted to bring a whole new fan base. And that's what he was going for by kind of cutting it off from what came before. So all the old fans would go away and that whole new group of fans would come in. This is like playing to a base. If you are only focused on that one small core group and you say, fuck everybody else, and your ratings drop, how much longer do you think it's going to be before your little base starts to shrivel up too? Because they're not going to keep falling for it. The ratings should tell you at this point that your little experiment has failed. And it's not just about those who watched through the Davies and Moffat eras either. It's also those who have been watching as far back as Classic. Davies and Moffat did a great job of keeping Classic Who fans interested and watching, even though the structure of the show was very different than what Classic Who had been. It never disrespected the show as a whole. It actually showed Classic Who great reverence and respect. So all those old fans that had been fans for decades had no problem watching more. And they embraced new Who. But this, you pretty much told all of the older fans that you don't care. That all that matters to you is the new people that you brought in that probably know nothing about Doctor Who at all, that are just here for your female doctor and your diversity check boxes. You can't make much of a mark as a showrunner or a writer or a director or a composer if your episodes are so boring and your storylines are crap and your characters are underdeveloped and nobody gives a damn. Just saying. All right. So that's the article. Pretty much everything that I was going to go over. So, I am going to try, since I'll be heading back home on Sunday, I'm going to try to be in the new Who Watch Along, provided I get home before 2 o'clock. We shall see. So, I will catch you guys on the flip side. Again, watch out for more videos reviewing the Time Lord Victorious merchandise as it drops. I don't know what else to say about Doctor Who as a whole, because they still haven't dropped any kind of trailer for the New Year special, the Revolution of the Daleks, so don't know. Their advertising campaign for this era is, shitty at best. So we shall see. Alright, guys. I will hit you up later when time permits. Peace out.